Thank you, Effie. Thank you, and also thank Venerable Carol for asking me to teach. I love teaching, and it's really a privilege, and so I'm really happy to have the opportunity to do this, and happy that there are some people interested in following it. Okay, so this is the first night of a new course on this topic of Tathagata essence, or Buddha nature as it's more commonly known. And so we'll start as usual with some prayers to get ourselves into a good state of mind for participating in this class, and we'll do a little bit of meditation to make sure our mind has the most positive motivation we can generate for being here. And we're still within the 15 days, or actually it's 14 days this year, 14 miracle days, when any merit we create is multiplied many, many times. So we have the chance to create huge amount of skies of merit, as Rinpoche would say, skies of merit by joining this class tonight. Okay, so for the prayer of refuge and bodhicitta, if you wish, you can imagine in front of you the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha. You can think he embodies all objects of refuge, all our spiritual teachers, and so on. All the excellent qualities that exist in the universe are embodied in him. And really try from your heart to feel the wish to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and follow his teachings to the best of your ability in order to become a Buddha yourself for the benefit of all beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And then when we recite the four measurable thoughts, really try to generate these thoughts, these attitudes in your mind, wishing the best for all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And to actually become enlightened, we need to create a lot of merit and also clear away negative energy. So the 7-limb prayer contains the most important practices for achieving that. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. And making the mandala offering, offering the whole universe, everything beautiful, precious, pleasing, imagining it as a pure land and wishing all beings to experience the pure land. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Let's recite the mantra of the Buddha a few times, and you can imagine light flowing from the Buddha in front of you into yourself, filling your entire body and mind and clearing away any negative energy like disturbing, confused thoughts, anything that might interfere with your ability to get the most out of the class tonight, and filling you with positive energy, being able to think clearly and listen well and understand what's being taught and so on, and helping you gain knowledge and understanding that will help your spiritual practice. Tayata Om Mune Mune Maha Mune Soha. Tayata Om Mune Mune Maha Mune Soha. Tayata Om Mune Mune Maha Mune Soha. So take a few minutes to make sure that you're really settled down in the present. You may have had a busy day, but put aside thoughts, any leftover thoughts, memories from today, so that your mind can be right here in the present moment, right in the place where you are. So being in the present moment and present place. You can watch your breath coming in and going out for a few minutes. That can help you to settle down. And then bring up into your mind, into your heart, as much compassion and love, positive feelings you can have for other people, other living beings, realizing they want to be happy and don't want to suffer. There's a lot of suffering. Everyone in samsara, cyclic existence, experiences one kind of suffering or another again and again. And it's so sad that everyone has so much suffering because it's completely unnecessary. Suffering isn't like something fixed and permanent that will always have to be there. But as we're going to learn in this course, all living beings have the potential to be completely free of all suffering and the causes of suffering, and even to go all the way to the state of full enlightenment, the state that the Buddha achieved. Every living being has that potential. And now we're really fortunate to have the chance to learn about this potential and how it can be awakened so that we can do that in our own mind. And then once we ourselves have a better understanding of Buddha nature and are working on making it manifest, then we're in a better position to help others to do the same. So really try to have as your motivation, your reason for being here, participating in this class tonight, that wish to be of benefit as much as you can to all other living beings. And if you're comfortable with the idea of becoming a Buddha, becoming enlightened yourself, then bring that in as well. So, the topic of this course that we're starting tonight is again called Tathagata Essence. And that is the term used in the Buddhist scriptures for what we normally call Buddha nature. And as we go through the course, we'll come across other terms as well that are used in the Buddhist scriptures. We'll come to them later. But anyway, Tathagata essence is one of those. And the Sanskrit term is Tathagata Garbha. So Tathagata is another term for a Buddha, someone who's fully enlightened. It's sometimes translated as one thus gone or one gone to thusness, meaning someone who has gone all the way to enlightenment, awakening. That's like the highest, most perfect state that you can have. There's nothing beyond that, nothing further than that. So someone who has gone all that way is a Tathagata, a Buddha. And then Garbha, the term Garbha, apparently has different meanings. One meaning is womb. And so sometimes I've seen, this term Tathagata Garbha translated as womb of Tathagata, the womb of the Tathagata. A little strange. But another meaning of Garbha is like the kernel of a grain or a seed from which something can grow. Yeah. So the thing that's right in the middle of a seed that has the potential to grow into the plant, the tree. And that's another meaning. And another meaning is essence, essence or essential nature. So that's what's being used here, Tathagata essence, essence of Tathagata. But anyway, in English, we have this habit of calling it Buddha nature, which is kind of an easy term to use. And so, yeah, I'll probably continue using that term much of the time. But yeah, we usually hear about Buddha nature in the early days, early part of our studies of Buddhism, and we might feel really captivated by it. I know I was. I thought, wow, yeah, I can become a Buddha. Everybody can become a Buddha. I mean, that's really amazing. I don't think you find that in any other religion, right? um, but then, what exactly is this thing we call Buddha nature? You know, what kind of phenomena is it? And how does it work? How does that Buddha nature enable us to transform ourselves into a Buddha? So that's what we're going to be learning about in this course. And we'll be looking at some scriptures that are many centuries old from India and Tibet. And the material isn't so easy to make sense of. One reason that is it goes into some very profound topics like emptiness. Emptiness is always challenging, and also the clear, light nature of mind. It's also coming up in this subject. And there will be unfamiliar terms and concepts. But I'll do my best to, explain things in simple terms that can make sense to us. And I'll also be leading some meditations as we go along, so that we can get a little bit of a better taste of this material, what's being talked about. So even though the material may be sometimes difficult and challenging, it's worth making an effort to understand it. Yeah, I mean, it's such a precious topic, Buddha nature. So I thought to start by looking at some benefits of studying this topic. So I've got some slides about that. This will hopefully inspire us to put the energy in. So one is that we will discover a precious treasure within us. There are these fairy tales and fables about people who are like poor, but then they find out they have this treasure, this buried treasure under their house or in their garden or something like that, and then they live happily ever after. So, I mean, that's usually about money, right? Gold, jewels, money, and so on. And I mean, of course, it's useful to have that, but it only brings temporary pleasure in this present life. We can't even take it with us to the next life, so it's only good for this life. So Buddha nature is a little bit like that, We have this really incredible, amazing, precious treasure inside of us, part of our being, and it's something that can free us from all suffering, all causes of suffering, all obscurations, all anything negative, anything hindering. We can be free of all of that. And then we can experience the most incredible peace, happiness, bliss, and all kinds of abilities with which we can benefit other people and other beings. Yeah, so getting in touch with our Buddha nature and cultivating it is really the best thing we can do for ourselves, but it's also the best thing we can do for others, for everybody. And it brings short-term benefit and long-term benefit, all the way up to enlightenment. So it can bring a lot of joy, a lot of sense of, wow, life is meaningful. It isn't so meaningless as I used to think. And that kind of leads to the second point of, we'll gain more confidence in ourselves and our potential. So one way that works is that, maybe when we first hear about Buddha nature, we might be excited about the idea, but we may also think it's hard to believe. Is it really true? But when we study it, like in this course, we're studying these ancient scriptures from masters in the past, and even Maitreya, the author of the main text, is Maitreya Buddha. So they're quite authoritative sources that we can rely on. And then just gaining more knowledge, more understanding of what exactly Buddha nature is and how it is possible to transform ourselves into enlightenment, that will really help us gain more confidence that this is true, it is possible. And I think it will also give us more confidence in ourselves, because, we have the tendency to identify with our shortcomings and our faults and our mistakes and our negativities, all the negative stuff. We tend to identify with that, think that's who I am, and it's kind of permanent. But in this topic, we're learning about the positive aspects of ourself and our positive potential, and how all those negative things aren't permanent. They're not like inherent permanent parts of us that are going to be there forever and ever and ever. But we can become free of them, possible to eliminate them. So the more we learn about that and think about that and get familiar with that, the more we'll have confidence in ourselves and feel positive about ourselves, rather than just focusing on our negativities and feeling doomed to perpetually be a deluded, miserable person forever and ever. But, oh no, we can become a fully purified and perfected person. Yeah. And then the third point, we will be able to overcome negative attitudes towards ourselves and others, like aversion, judgmentalness, hatred, and arrogance. So the notion of Buddha nature is like a really useful tool to use when either dealing with ourselves or dealing with others who are really negative. When we see or hear about people doing awful things like starting wars and committing murders and rapes and all kinds of things that cause a lot of suffering to others, it can be very hard to not be angry at them, and hard to have positive feelings towards them. But if we get an understanding of Buddha nature and how this is true for everyone, for every living being without exception, even the ones who do the most horrendous, awful things, they have Buddha nature too. And so contemplating that can really help us to not be so critical and judgmental, and instead have compassion for them, love for them, patience for them, and so forth. And so, it's one of the tools that we can use to overcome negative attitudes towards others and have more positive attitudes. And the same with ourselves as well. When we notice beating ourselves up, hating ourselves, loathing ourselves, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. I have Buddha nature. I have the potential to be enlightened. I'm not going to be like this forever, never, never. And then the last benefit, these are just some things that I came up with, not really from the text, but my own experience and those of others. So we will also have more energy, joyful energy to practice Dharma, especially to develop loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, and so on. So I think this is because if we do have a better understanding of what Buddha nature is, and with that understanding comes more confidence that it's true, that, I really can transform myself, become enlightened, become a Buddha, then that will lead us to have more energy, joyful energy to put into the practices to bring that about, to bring about our attainment of enlightenment. That's really important. Joyful energy is one of the 6 perfections of a bodhisattva, the bodhisattva path to enlightenment. So it's taking delight, taking joy in doing what is positive, what is virtuous. And so we need that because it's not easy. Even if we have Buddha nature, but that doesn't mean it's just going to happen like that without putting any effort. We do have to put in a lot of effort. And so where we can get that effort from is by, just having more confidence that it is possible, it is doable, and I'm not a hopeless case. And it's just a question of, rolling up our shirt sleeves and getting to work and doing it, but with joy, not seeing it as a drudgery, but taking joy in following the path to become enlightened. Okay, so these are, there's probably other benefits as well, but these are just some to get started with. And so the next slide looks at what text we will study. So the root text is called the Sublime Continuum of the Mahayana, Uttaratantra. That's kind of a abbreviated title in Tibetan, Uttaratantra. That's what they call it in Tibetan, in the Tibetan tradition. And there's another name for this text, which is Ratna Gotra Vibhanga. So if you ever come across that title, that's just the same text. It's just another title. But in the Tibetan tradition, they usually call it the Uttaratantra, and in English we call it the Sublime Continuum. And so according to the online encyclopedia of Buddhism, it says this text was composed in India between the 3rd and 5th centuries. And it systematizes the Buddha nature teachings that were circulating in multiple sutras at this time, such as the Tathagata Garbha Sutra, Mahaparinirvana Sutra, and the Sri Maladevi Sutra. And I found English translations of all of those. If you go online, if you're interested, you can read them if you have time. But anyway, so those are 3 sutras from the Buddha that contain this notion of Tathagata Garbha, the essence of the Tathagata, or Buddha nature. And in the title, it says Tantra, right? Uttaratantra, but that doesn't mean this is a tantric text, okay? The Sanskrit term Tantra actually means continuum. So, and it still has the same meaning in Tantra, but it's a different. So this is a holy sutric text. It has nothing to do with Tantra. And then the Uttara, that first part of the title, in Tibetan, it's Lama. And the same word as in teachers, spiritual teachers. But it has other meanings like sublime and everlasting. And so, some people chose the term sublime, so that's why they call it Sublime Continuum. But it's sometimes, translators call it the everlasting continuum. So that's another type, another English translation you might encounter. And there's a commentary by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I found it on Alex Berzin's website, Study Buddhism. He gave it in Holland many decades ago, and Alex was translating. So if you're interested, it's fairly, short and clear and nice if you want to read another commentary, a contemporary one. And so in that commentary, His Holiness says that here the term continuum refers to the mental continuum, our mind, which is actually everlasting in the sense that it's existed from beginningless time, and it will exist forever up to enlightenment, and even beyond enlightenment. It will never go out of existence. The mind will never go out of existence. And so that's what the term continuum refers to. And that's why it kind of makes sense to say everlasting continuum. And the Dalai Lama says about this text, he said, this is a text explaining how to purify away the stains from the everlasting continuity of one's own mental continuum. How to clean up our mind so that it can reach its real nature. And then the author of this text is said to be Maitreya. And again, it was between the 3rd and 5th centuries. So this is according to the Tibetan tradition. Tibetans say that the author of this text is Maitreya. And in fact, they say there are 5 texts composed by Maitreya. And you've probably heard the story. I won't go into the details, but the story about Asanga. Yeah. And so he was a great Indian master, and he was trying to understand the meaning of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, and he was having difficulty. So he thought, if I go into retreat, then I hope to meet Maitreya and ask him questions. I have a direct communication with Maitreya and ask questions. So he went into retreat and spent 12 years and went through a lot of hardships, a lot of difficulties. Finally, in the end, he did meet Maitreya Buddha, and Maitreya took the Sangha to Tushita, which is where Maitreya is believed to be living now, and taught him these 5 texts. And then the Sangha came back to this world and wrote them down, and also wrote commentaries to them. So this is the story in the Tibetan tradition. But this text was also translated into Chinese 500 or 600 years before it was translated into Tibetan. So there's a very ancient Chinese translation. But in the Chinese tradition, they say that the author is someone named Saramati. And I tried to find information about this person online, but it seems like they can't find any information. Some scholars think that it might be Sthiramati. I don't know how to say it properly. There is a well-known Indian scholar named Sthiramati. So they think it might be that person, but they don't know for sure. But anyway, in the Chinese tradition, they don't say that this text was written by Maitreya. But since we're following the Tibetan tradition, we'll stick to that story, and it's a nice story anyway. And I can imagine too, like that story of, Maitreya taking a Sangha up to another realm and teaching, it's hard for contemporary scholars to believe. Very supernatural, so on. But Tibetans usually don't have any trouble believing those stories. And these 5 texts of Maitreya are all very, very important texts in all traditions of Tibetan Buddhism. So you find them studied in the monasteries of all Gelug, Kagyu, Nyingma, and Shakya, and so on. They're very important. And I read that these 5 texts are called the zip files of Mahayana Buddhism. I guess because they're really short. Yeah, I mean they're very concise. They don't say a lot. That's why you need commentaries to explain what Maitreya was talking about. And also, of the 5 texts of Maitreya, this one, the Sublime Continuum, is the only one that is considered to be written according to the Prasangika point of view. The other texts, three of them are according to the Chittamatra, mind-only school. One, the Ornament for Clear Realization, is according to the Madhyamika Svatantrika school. But only this one is considered prasangika, explaining things according to prasangikas. But it's not that Maitreya says, I'm going to explain things according to the prasangika. I don't think those terms were even around at that time when he wrote the text. They came later. But scholars, reading very carefully what he is saying, understand, oh, he's talking about the prasangika point of view. Okay, so this text has 5 chapters, and these 5 chapters explain the seven Vajra points. So the main subject matter of the Sublime Continuum are these 7 Vajra points, which we'll look at later. They're explained in the 5 chapters, and our study will cover only part of the first chapter. And we'll focus on the 4th Vajra point, which is called basic element. And that's the term used in the text for Buddha nature. So we don't have time to go through the entire text. And it seems that when Lama Zopa Rinpoche put together the basic program, his wish was for students to learn about Buddha nature. And so that's why he chose this text. And we'll focus just on that particular point of Buddha nature. But I thought to start by doing an overview of the entire text. And and I'll talk a little bit about the 7 Vajra points tonight, and we'll continue next week. And actually, what we have, I think you received from Effie. There's a translation of the root verses, just of the first chapter, only chapter 1, and then there's also a commentary by Gyaltsabje, the one of the chief disciples of Lama Tsongkhapa. And again, it's only the first chapter of that commentary, but we have a book in our library called it's called the Sublime Continuum, and it's explanatory commentary, and it's translated by Bo Jiang, a Chinese scholar. He's at Columbia University. He's one of the fellows of Robert Thurman's organization. And so in that book, it's quite scholarly, but he has the translation of the whole of the Sublime Continuum together with a commentary by Asanga to that, and he has the whole of Gyaltsabje's commentary as well. So he's translated all of those, and so I'm hoping it will I will find it useful to help me understand things. But he also translated it into Chinese. There's a Chinese, some of you might be interested if you can read Chinese. He as he was translating it, making an English translation of this, he was also translating it into Chinese, and it's published in Taiwan, both in Taiwan and I think mainland China. Yeah. So anyway, I was looking at that and I noticed that the first chapter is really long. It's got 167 verses, and the other chapters are shorter. They have 73 or 39, 98, and 28 verses. So chapter 1 is really the biggest, heftiest of the book. And it's mainly about Buddha nature, because that's really the main topic of this whole text. And yes, so you have the root verses of Sublime Continuum, and then you also have the commentary from Gyaltsab, and that was translated by Gavin Kilty and Sophie McGrath. Um, so don't feel obliged to read the commentary if you don't have time or if you find it too difficult. We won't have time to go through the whole thing anyway, and I will extract the parts that are most important and explain them to you. But if you want to, it's actually not that difficult. I'm kind of surprised, because when we studied the Ornament for Clear Realization in the master's program, we used a commentary by Gyaltsab, and I found it really difficult to understand. But this one, I don't know, not too difficult. Okay, so those are the materials, and then there may be other materials that we'll, come to as we go along. For example, there's a commentary by Jetsun Chökyi Gyaltsen, who's the textbook writer for Serije Monastery, and so he wrote a commentary just to the Buddha nature part of this text, and that might be easier to understand than Gyaltsabje's commentary. So when we get to that part, then I can share that with you. So before we get into the way that the Buddha nature is explained in this text, Sublime Continuum, I thought it would be helpful to just look at it in a general way. And so the next slide has that. And there's actually different explanations of Buddha nature that are given by the different schools of tenets. So I think some of you have studied tenets, and you know there are these different schools, like there's the Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Chittamatra, and then the Madhyamaka, which has 2 divisions, and so on. And they have different ways of explaining things. So when it comes to Buddha nature, it's like that. Although we only find mention of Buddha nature in the Mahayana schools of tenets, which would be the Chittamatra, or your mind only, and then the Madhyamaka. But there are differences between the way Buddha nature is explained in Chittamatra and the way it's explained in Madhyamaka. Actually, I gave some years ago, Sitchinling asked me to give some talks on Buddha nature. I think 2 or 3 talks. So yeah, I did explain that then. I explained how, the differences between the Chittamatra and the Madhyamaka. So if you're interested, you could look into those talks. And then when it comes to Tibetan Buddhism, so in Tibetan Buddhism, there are different schools, and there are also differences among the Tibetan traditions, how they explain Buddha nature. Although I haven't really studied that, but I'm just aware, I've just heard that, like especially in the Kagyu tradition, they have some quite different ways of asserting things regarding Buddha nature. But yeah, what we'll be doing here is looking at the way Buddha nature is explained by the Prasangika Madhyamaka school and the Gelugpa tradition. I mean, if you want on your own to explore others, that's fine. But it's good to at least get one system's way of explaining it clear, and then you can, look at the others in a more informed way. But if you start just taking bits and pieces from many different traditions, then it could be confusing. Okay, so Buddha nature in general. So this is a definition of Buddha nature, although again, the texts call it Buddha lineage. In some texts, it's called Buddha lineage rather than Buddha nature, but anyway, they're interchangeable. So a Buddha nature or Buddha lineage is a phenomenon that is suitable to transform into a Buddha's body. And body here, I don't like using the term body because it always sounds like this kind of thing, you know, flesh and blood and bones, but it's not. The Sanskrit term is kaya, and it's more like one aspect of a Buddha's way of existing, one aspect of an enlightened being, like that. So this is a general definition of Buddha nature, and it comes from the commentaries to Maitreya's Ornament of Clear Realization. So in general, Buddha nature is something that will transform into one of the Buddha's kayas. And there are a number of these that we'll look at in the next slide, the different kayas. But first, let's look at two kinds of Buddha nature. And these will be explained more in this text. So one kind of Buddha nature is called the naturally abiding lineage. That's just a direct translation of the Tibetan and Sanskrit terms. And what this refers to is the emptiness of a mind that still has stains or defilements. So that like our minds, like my mind at least, I don't know about you, but it means the mind of a sentient being. A sentient being is anybody that isn't a Buddha. There's this dividing line: sentient beings and then enlightened beings. So enlightened beings are not sentient beings, and sentient beings are not enlightened beings. But you know, they're different. And what makes them different is that a Buddha has completely eliminated all stains, all defilements, all obscurations from their mind. No, not even the tiniest trace of any stain or defilement. And I'll explain what those are in a minute. But then a sentient being is anybody who still has even just a tiny bit of stains or defilements left to purify. And so, so if you have a sentient being and their mind, which still has some stains in it, so the emptiness of inherent existence of that mind, emptiness is the true nature, the actual way of existing of everything, every phenomena that exists. Everything has emptiness as its true nature. But here we're zeroing in on the mind of a sentient being and the emptiness of that mind. That's the meaning of the natural abiding lineage. So it's not easy to understand. It takes time, but that's how it's explained. And this is a permanent phenomenon. Emptiness, all emptinesses are permanent phenomena, which means they don't change moment by moment. And a synonym of permanent is uncompounded. That comes up in the text, uncompounded. And that means not arising from causes and conditions, not compounded by, coming into existence from causes and conditions. So it's the opposite of impermanent things. So impermanent things are changing moment by moment all the time, and they are compounded. They arise from, they depend on causes and conditions to give rise to them. So, so emptiness, the emptiness of a mind, is a permanent, uncompounded phenomena. And it is able to transform into the nature truth body of a Buddha. So this is one of the bodies, one of the kayas of a Buddha. We'll look on the next slide. We'll look at what those are. So I think this is actually the main kind of Buddha nature of the two kinds of Buddha nature. This is the main one explained in this text. Most of the material would be focused on that. So we have to get used to it. It's not easy to understand. But so emptiness, you've probably heard many times, emptiness is the true nature of everything, everything that exists. Yeah, every animate phenomena, every being, including enlightened beings and also sentient beings, but also all other kinds of phenomena, material phenomena, whatever there is, whatever exists has emptiness as its true nature. Like it's like a quality of everything. It's the true mode of existence, the true way of existing of everything. So even though everything has emptiness as its nature, its true nature, only the emptiness of a mind is a Buddha nature. Because Buddha nature has to be something that can turn into one of the bodies of a Buddha, one of the kayas of a Buddha. And, the emptiness of a thermos doesn't have the ability to do that. That can't turn into a Buddha's body, Buddha's kaya. But the emptiness of a sentient being's mind does have that ability, that potential to turn into the nature body of the Buddha. So, does a Buddha have Buddha nature? What do you think? Does a Buddha have Buddha nature? Buddha's mind is empty. Yeah. So there is the emptiness of a Buddha's mind. But what's the full definition of Buddha nature? It has to be the emptiness of a mind that has stains. So the Buddha's mind doesn't have stains. So if you have a sentient being, okay, the emptiness of their mind is called Buddha nature, this naturally abiding lineage. Then when that sentient being purifies their mind, gets rid of all the stains, then they become a Buddha, and the emptiness of their mind, which was called, naturally abiding lineage, is now called the nature body. So it's basically the same thing, but the base is different. The basis of that emptiness is different. In one case, it's a stained mind, a dirty mind, not yet fully purified mind, and in the other case, it's a fully purified mind. But it's basically the same thing, emptiness. And then stains, you might be wondering, what are these stains? So this refers to the two kinds of obscurations: afflictive obscurations, which include all of the afflictions like greed, hatred, ignorance, jealousy, pride, and so on. Those are the things that were mainly responsible for our suffering and keeping us in samsara. So those are some of the stains. And the other stains are called by various terms: knowledge obscurations, obscurations to omniscience, cognitive obscurations. So those are the imprints that are left by the afflictions. So even after the afflictions have been cleared away, there's still those imprints, like the smell of the onion. They always use that example. Even if you take away the onion and the garlic, but the smell lingers for a while. So those obscurations are still there even after the afflictions have been cleared away, and they prevent the attainment of Buddhahood or enlightenment, omniscience. So those are also stains. So as long as even there's just a tiny trace of those stains left in the mind, then one is still a sentient being, not yet an enlightened being, and the emptiness of one's mind is naturally abiding lineage, Buddha nature. So this one is not easy to understand. I was baffled for a long time. I'm starting to understand it a little more, but yeah, it's just a question of getting familiar with it. Learning about it, thinking about it, meditating on it, discussing it, and slowly it starts to make more sense. But I think the second type of Buddha nature is easier to understand. This is called a developmental or transforming lineage. There's different ways of translating it. And so this is a Buddha nature that is suitable to transform into a compounded body of a Buddha. So a compounded body, that's another, that's a synonym of impermanent. So among the kayas, we'll look at next, among the different kayas, different bodies of a Buddha, some of them are impermanent, like the form bodies that, emanations of the Buddha going out and helping sentient beings. So those are impermanent phenomena. And also the wisdom of the Buddha's mind, that's called the wisdom dharmakaya. So Buddha's mind, with all that wisdom, all those excellent qualities, that's also impermanent. That's an impermanent phenomena. So something that is able to transform into one of those compounded bodies is this kind of Buddha nature. So included in this are virtuous mental factors like compassion. That's just one example, but we have a lot of virtuous mental factors like faith, love, compassion, wisdom, bodhicitta, and so on. So virtuous states of mind, virtuous mental factors, as well as the mental consciousness itself. Um, there's apparently some debate about sense consciousnesses. What about our sense consciousnesses, our seeing and hearing and so on? So in Samsara Nirvana Buddha Nature, volume 3 of the uh, Library of Wisdom and Compassion, that's actually another good resource if you want to learn more about this topic. Samsara Nirvana Buddha Nature by His Holiness and Venerable Thupten Chödrön. The last few chapters of that book have a lot of information about Buddha nature, very clear explanations. So in there it says that there's debate. Some scholars say that the sense consciousnesses are part of the Buddha nature, and others say no, they're not. So that's still, not definite. So that's easier to understand because we can see our virtuous mental factors, at least sometimes when they come up, and our mental consciousness. So those aspects of our mind that exist now will become aspects of enlightenment, kayas of the Buddha, when we become enlightened. So both of these two types of Buddha nature exist in the minds of all sentient beings, even those who are doing horrendous, horrible, destructive, harmful things, who are really, really deluded. So they have Buddha nature as well. So I'd just like to read a quote from that book, Samsara Nirvana Buddha Nature. So His Holiness's explanation about these two kinds of Buddha nature. So he says, the existence of the naturally abiding Buddha nature, the emptiness of inherent existence of ordinary beings' minds, means that mental defilements can be eliminated. Why? If phenomena existed inherently, they would be independent of everything else, and thus would be unable to function, to influence one another, or change. So if things were not empty, they'd be like stuck, frozen. They couldn't move, they couldn't change. So then we couldn't get rid of the defilements. The fact that the ultimate nature of the mind is empty of inherent existence indicates that the mind can change. That's why that's so important to understand. In addition, all defilements are rooted in fundamental ignorance, the erroneous mental factor that grasps all phenomena as possessing an inherent reality. This erroneous grasping gives rise to attachment, anger, and all other afflictions, and supports virtuous polluted mental states as well. So like even when we create virtue, we do virtuous things, but if our mind is still under the influence of ignorance, those virtuous actions just keep us in samsara. Yeah, instead of getting out, we get good rebirths, we get good experiences, but we're still in samsara rather than free. So it's because of ignorance. From these afflictions spring our actions or karma, which cause us to take continual rebirth in cyclic existence. Cultivating insight into the true nature of reality, emptiness, initiates the process of undoing this causal chain. With the development of the wisdom that directly perceives reality, emptiness or suchness, this ignorance can be overpowered and completely eradicated from the mind. The defilements are not embedded in the ultimate nature of the mind. They too lack inherent existence. So when the antidote of the wisdom, directly realizing emptiness, is applied to them, they can be removed from the mind. So that's good news, isn't it? So that's why emptiness is such an important part of all of this. If our mind wasn't empty, if our mind didn't have emptiness as its real nature, then the afflictions, the defilements would be stuck and couldn't be moved, couldn't be changed, couldn't be eradicated. So then no way we could reach enlightenment or even nirvana, get out of samsara. Even though emptiness is not easy to understand, it's very important to keep working at it. Okay, so let's look at the kayas. The next slide. So these are the kayas or bodies of a Buddha, and there's different ways of dividing them. And I think these are because in different texts, different scriptures, some will talk about 2 kayas, some will talk about 3 kayas, some will talk about 4 kayas. I mean, they're basically the same, but it's just a way of dividing them different. And so first we have 2 kayas and 4 kayas. So the twofold division of the kayas is into, English term is truth body, dharmakaya, and the second is the form body, rupakaya. So that's the twofold division, dharmakaya, rupakaya, truth body, form body. But then each of those can be divided into 2. So that's how we get to 4. So let's start with the truth body or dharmakaya. So the truth body is known as the body for one's own welfare or purpose. The body for our own welfare, our own purpose. And that's because having the truth body, the dharmakaya, means we ourselves are completely free of all the stains, the defilements, the afflictions, the obscurations, or all the negative things. The bad stuff has been totally eradicated from our mind. And we have also attained all the realizations, all the good qualities, all the positive states of mind. They've been fully developed, fully perfected. So we are in the most ideal, perfect state of mind that can exist. So that's good for us. And there's 2 divisions. When this is divided, sometimes they just talk about the dharmakaya, but if it's divided, there are 2 divisions. So one is the nature body, that was mentioned before. That's what the emptiness of the mind becomes when we reach enlightenment, the nature body. And the Sanskrit term, I've seen it written differently, but here it's Svabhavikakaya, nature body. Anyway, so that is the emptiness of a Buddha's mind. The emptiness of a Buddha's mind, the ultimate nature, the true nature of a Buddha's mind, emptiness of inherent existence. So just like everything, just like ourselves and everything else being empty of inherent existence, the same is true for a Buddha. So even a Buddha is empty of inherent existence. Isn't truly inherently existing, but even a Buddha's mind, all aspects of a Buddha are empty of inherent existence. So the emptiness of a Buddha's mind is called the nature body. And we'll learn more about that as we go along in this topic. And then the second division is the wisdom truth body, Jnana Dharmakaya. And this is the Buddha's mind itself. Buddha's mind, which is omniscient, all-knowing, all-seeing, seeing everything that exists, all conventional truths, all ultimate truths, everything, and full of all the good qualities, perfect wisdom, compassion, love, patience, whatever good qualities they are, fully developed, fully perfected all the time. Yeah, and free of all faults, in case I forgot to say that. So the fully developed, fully perfected state of mind of a Buddha is called the wisdom truth body. Then the second of the two bodies is the form body, Rupakaya, and this is called the body for others' welfare or others' purpose, because these are manifestations or emanations of the Buddha's mind. The Buddha's mind is able to appear in many different forms at the same time. Just create all these emanations, manifestations like Tara and Manjushri, and all our favorite Buddhas, and animals and trees and everything, anything, to help sentient beings. Because that's the whole purpose of reaching enlightenment, is to help sentient beings. And to be able to help sentient beings, you have to reach out to them, because they can't see the Dharmakaya. If a Buddha were just to stay in this state of Dharmakaya, the sentient beings wouldn't be able to see them, relate to them. So the Buddha has to manifest in these forms to communicate with, to reach out and help sentient beings. So yeah, the form body, Rupakaya, these are for the welfare of others. And there's two divisions of that. One is called the complete enjoyment body, or Sambhogakaya. And this is the type of body that appears only to Arya Bodhisattvas. That means bodhisattvas, high-level bodhisattvas who have a direct realization of emptiness. So, higher level bodhisattvas, and they're in a pure land. So this Sambhogakaya will appear to them there in that place and teach them what they need to know to continue their path, to finish their work and get to enlightenment. So only Arya Bodhisattvas are able to see the Sambhogakaya. And the other emanation body, or form body, is the emanation body, or Nirmanakaya. So this is the kind of form that can appear to ordinary beings who are not Aryas like us. And the Guru Shakyamuni Buddha was an example of this. He was an emanation body, or Nirmanakaya. So according to Mahayana Buddhism, the Buddha already attained enlightenment a long, long, long time ago in another world. And then when the time was right for him to come into this world and turn the wheel of Dharma, then he showed the aspect of taking birth as Prince Siddhartha, and so on, that whole story. So that was actually a Nirmanakaya form. emanation body of the Buddha, to come into our world and teach the Dharma so that we could learn the Dharma and practice the Dharma and so on. So those are, I mean, the Nirmanakaya are for just regular, ordinary beings who are not Aryas. So that's how we get 2 kayas and 4 kayas. And then sometimes they talk about 3 kayas in some texts. So when there's 3 kayas, the 3 kayas are the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. And again, the Dharmakaya, would still have its 2 divisions, but they just merge them together in one, in this three kaya format. So yeah, we'll encounter these terms as we go through the text. So it's good to have some familiarization with it. So the next slide shows the relationship between the lineages and the kayas that we just went through in the last 2 slides. So first we have impermanent. That's kind of easier to understand, impermanent things. Okay, so under impermanence we have the developmental lineage. And so that again includes aspects of our mind that will turn into aspects of a Buddha's mind, like our virtuous qualities, our love, our compassion. So just as a Buddha has love, we have love. Just as a Buddha has compassion, we have compassion. But of course, our compassion is much, much more limited. We only feel it sometimes for some people, and it's very weak. It doesn't last very long. But at least we have it. We have that compassion. So that compassion in our mind, if we keep working on it, cultivating it more and more, strengthening it, purifying it, eventually it will become the compassion in the mind of a Buddha. When we become a Buddha, we'll have enlightened compassion. So that's part of our developmental lineage. So aspects of our mind that will, continue to grow and develop and turn into aspects of Buddha's mind. So under the developmental lineage, we have the 2 form bodies, emanation body, enjoyment body, and then one part of the truth body, the wisdom truth body, the Jnana Dharmakaya. So those are all on the side of impermanent phenomena. And then on the other side, we have permanent phenomena. So the naturally abiding lineage is something permanent. And then if you follow that down, we have one part of the truth body, the Dharmakaya, that is permanent, and that is the nature truth body, the Svabhavika. Okay. So all of these 4 bodies, 3 bodies, 4 bodies, 2 bodies, whatever you want to, however you want to divide them, they're all Buddha. They're all considered Buddha. So any questions so far? Anything that's not clear? Yeah. We have one live question first, then I'll get to you.
Just to confirm that even though the virtue that we create in this current situation is polluted because we're under the control of self-grasping ignorance, it still can be put into this developmental lineage. It doesn't have to be after the path of seeing where it's unpolluted virtue. Or are we still kind of tracking?
Well, and that's a good question. So your question is virtue that we are creating or virtuous mental factors? Because
well, the virtuous mental states, the compassion, the love that's underneath this diva mental.
Yeah.
Is that?
That's a good question. I mean, they do say that to really create the causes for enlightenment, we do need to have bodhicitta, a genuine, uncontrived bodhicitta. But still, I think, we can, the way I think of it, I don't know if it's as accurate or not, but, there's a continuum of compassion. Yeah. It can never be completely destroyed. It might be sort of buried for a while, go underground for a while. But I think my understanding is compassion has been in our mind from beginningless time, just as the afflictions, the ignorance and the afflictions have also been in our mind from beginningless time. I think the virtuous mental factors as well, compassion, love, faith, they've been there too. They didn't just suddenly get injected into our mind at some point, but they've always been there. But, it's been up and down. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. But I think, there's got to be a continuum, some kind of continuum of that compassion that keeps going. I haven't heard this explained, but this is just my way of thinking. And that continuum will continue. We develop more and more and more, and becomes great compassion, and eventually becomes the compassion of an enlightened being. I mean, I like to think of it that way.
I sure would too.
Makes sense.
All right. First, I apologize. I'm terrified to ask it, but I'm just going to ask it anyway. So I get a little hung up on the word transform. So when we're talking about the naturally abiding lineage, right, that it's a permanent phenomena, the first thing that threw me was, wait a second, how can something be permanent transform? But then later on, you kind of answered it a little bit, I understand. And then from other studies, I can kind of think of it, or I want to ask if this is correct, to kind of think of it that when the stains and defilements are cleaned away from it, it's not that it transforms, it's that things are wiped away to sort of reveal it. So, and then I want to make sure I kind of understand that transform might be something, a word that I'm using like a little too hard.
Yeah.
Too
I'm-
definitive.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really good point that you brought up. I was kind of waiting for someone to bring it up. Because you're right. They say that impermanent things can change, and they do change. That's their nature. They're changing constantly all the time, whereas permanent things don't change. They're unchanging. They're not affected by causes and conditions. So it is kind of weird to say that, the emptiness of our mind transforms into the nature body. But that is the term used. They do use that term. But yeah, it isn't. I think I was trying to explain that. It isn't so much that the emptiness itself changes, but rather, because emptiness is always a quality of something. Emptiness is like a quality of things. It isn't just floating around in space all by itself, but it's a quality, an attribute of something. And so in this case, it's the quality of a mind, the emptiness of a sentient being's mind, a stained mind, a defiled mind. So that mind, even though it has stains, it still has emptiness as its real nature, its ultimate nature. So yeah, when all the stains are cleared away, the emptiness itself doesn't change, but because the mind changes, the mind goes from being a dirty, stained mind to a clean, purified mind, then, I mean, we're basically just changing the term. Now we're calling it nature body rather than Buddha nature. Instead of calling it, yeah. Earlier it was called naturally abiding lineage, Buddha nature. And then once the stains have all cleared away, that same emptiness is now called the nature body. So yeah, that's how I understand it. The emptiness itself doesn't get changed, but because the mind gets changed, then it gets a new name. Get a brand new name. Carol. Carol.
Thank you, Venerable, for that explanation, because one of the things that came to mind for me when we talk about Buddha nature is, I remember when I was first learning about Buddhism, that there were people who basically looked at Buddha nature as meaning that we were all enlightened already. We just didn't know it. So there was like this argument or this view that, oh yes, we're actually all enlightened. And that didn't really make sense to me. But I think when you explain it in this way, it qualifies that puts it in a logical sense that doesn't negate, of course, this seed. I mean, we talk about a seed or a potential, but by the same token, I think I feel okay with this change happening when you talk about the permanent or emptiness as a quality of a phenomena.
Mhm. Yeah, and actually, this text, I don't know if it will go into this or not, but but in some sutras, like the Tathagata Garbha Sutra, it does actually say that. The Buddha says that inside of each sentient being is a fully enlightened Buddha. So, I mean, it's understandable that some people would take that literally and really think that, oh, we just have to get rid of all this stuff and then there's a Buddha there. But our tradition, like Lama Tsongkhapa's tradition, says, no, 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 you can't take that literally. Buddha didn't really mean that. He talked like that for certain people who needed to hear that, but it's not meant to be taken literally. Yeah, so that is a point that comes up in regard to this topic of Tathagata essence and Tathagata Garbha. But yeah, there's probably still people who believe that. And yeah, maybe it is helpful, for them to get on the path, but then eventually we have to. Actually, I just remembered. I think in some Tibetan traditions as well, this kind of idea comes up. It makes it sound as if we're already Buddha. And I remember hearing or reading Maitreya Ricard giving some analogy. I think there was an artist, a sculptor, and the sculptor would take a block of marble or something and then make it into a statue, beautiful, magnificent statue. And then, was posing this question, is the sculptor actually creating this statue out of the piece of marble? Or is the sculptor just uncovering the beautiful statue that's already there? Marble. And it's just like two different ways of looking at the same thing, right? Two different perspectives. So some artists might like one way of thinking over the other. But it's kind of similar, a little bit similar, to us becoming a Buddha. Are we clearing away, chipping away all the stuff that's preventing us from becoming a Buddha, or are we just bringing out what's already there? I mean, in the end, it comes to the same point anyway, but different ways of looking at it. So yeah, different strokes for different folks, like I say, different ways of explaining it. Okay, anyone else? I did want to start talking about the 7 Vajra points that are the main topics. We're not going to go into all of them in detail, but just look at them in a kind of overview. So the next slide has, okay, so this has the first verse of the Sublime Continuum where it introduces these 7 Vajra points. So I've numbered them. So the first 3 are the 3 jewels. We're familiar with those: Buddha, Dharma, and here it says assembly, but that refers to the Sangha. They are sometimes called the, the virtuous assembly, or the Supreme Assembly. That's right, Supreme Assembly. They're sometimes called. So that's the Sangha. Then number 4 is called, the term here is basic element. Kam in Tibetan, Dhatu in Sanskrit. So this is how it's translated here. But that refers to Buddha nature, Tathagata essence. That's how it's called in this text. 5, number 5 is enlightenment. 6, excellent qualities. And finally, 7, enlightened activities. So the body of the entire treatise is condensed into these 7 Vajra points. So we will just start looking at them tonight and then continue next week. More information about them next week. But so these 7 points aren't things that Maitreya just invented on his own, but they are from sutras, various sutras. And he mentions this one sutra. I tried to find it online and I couldn't. It's called the Questions of King Dharanishvara Sutra. So all these 7 points are in that sutra. So Maitreya is kind of saying, I didn't just invent these, they're in the sutras. And I'll just read a brief explanation of these 7 points given by Gyaltsabje in his commentary. He says, this passage reveals that which is a Buddha included within the 3 Buddha bodies. That's the first point. So he mentions 3 Buddha bodies. So that which is a Buddha included in the 3 bodies. That's the first point. And then second, Dharma jewels included within true paths and true cessations. Those are like the ultimate Dharma, the real Dharma. And the assembly of Mahayana superiors, the Sangha jewels. So it's specifically Mahayana Aryas, Mahayana superiors. That's the third point. And he says, these 3, the first 3, show us our temporary and ultimate objects of refuge. And then the following 4, the last 4, are treated as their causes. So first is the basic element, also known as Tathagata essence. And Gyaltsabje mentions the two types. One, the suchness with defilement. So suchness is another term for emptiness. Suchness with defilement. So suchness with defilement. That sounds kind of funny. It doesn't mean that suchness or emptiness itself is defiled, but it's together with defilement in the sense that the mind has defilement. So then the suchness of that mind is also with it somehow. So that's the first type of Buddha nature, the naturally abiding lineage. And then the potential that exists in sentient beings' minds to produce supramundane qualities. So that refers to the second type of Buddha nature, the developmental, the potential existing in the minds of sentient beings to produce supramundane qualities, like realization of emptiness and all the stages of the path and so on. And then next is the enlightenment. That's Vajra point number 5. The enlightenment that consists of the ultimate transformation of exalted wisdom and abandonments. And then the qualities, number 6, qualities of separation and fruition relating to enlightenment. And then the last one is the enlightened activities of perfect and complete Buddhas. So that's just a really brief explanation of those 7, but we'll look at them more next week. The next slide shows how the 7 points are covered in the 5 chapters. So chapter 1 covers the first 4 Vajra points, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, or assembly, and Buddha nature, basic element. And chapter 2 covers the 5th point, enlightenment. Chapter 3, the 6th, excellent qualities. Chapter 4, the 7th, enlightened activities. And chapter 5 talks about the benefits of the text. So we're only going to be looking at the first chapter and mainly at the 4th of the Vajra points. But I thought it would be nice to spend some time looking at the first 3 points of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, because there's some material in this text about the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha that you don't find in other texts like Lam Rim. And so I thought it'd be nice to pull some of that out and look at it, get a bigger, deeper understanding of the objects of refuge, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And also learning more about the Buddha will hopefully inspire us to want to develop our potential to become a Buddha. And it's said that these 7 Vajra points have a relationship. They're like interconnected in a cause-effect relationship. And it seems to me that there's actually 2 ways they can be seen as cause and effect. And one of these is in verse 3 of the root text. So I thought if you could put that on the screen. So let's look at the verses from the root text. Okay, so this is the root text, and the first verse we already looked at. I pay homage. Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, sorry. I pay homage to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. That's actually not part of the root text, but there's this tradition in Tibet when texts were translated from Sanskrit into Tibetan. The king, one of the kings, made a decree that they had to put a homage at the beginning that would help indicate which of the 3 baskets the text belongs to. So here it says, I pay homage to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So that's the translator added that. So which basket is that? Sutra. Sutra, yeah. So of the 3 baskets, one of the 3 baskets is the Sutra basket and Sutra Pitaka. And so anything belonging to the Sutra basket, they have to say, I pay homage to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So when you see that at the beginning of a text, you know, oh, this is part of the Sutra basket. And then what about the Vinaya basket? What is the homage paid to? The omniscient one, right? So if it says homage to omniscient one, then it's Vinaya. And then the other basket is Abhidharma. So who is the homage paid to? Manjushri, right? So if it says homage to Manjushri, then it's quite clever. So anyway, that first line is from the translator. So then the actual text starts with the next line: Buddha, Dharma, assembly, basic element, enlightenment, excellent qualities, and finally enlightened activities. The body of the entire treatise is condensed into these 7 Vajra points. And then the second verse says, these 7 are presented by way of their characteristics and order, following the questions of King Dharanishvara Sutra. The first 3 points should be known from the introduction, and the latter 4 points from the divisions of the intelligent ones and the victors. So what he's saying there is that, yeah, I got these points from this sutra. I didn't make them up. And he's saying that the way they are explained here in this text accords with that sutra in terms of the characteristics and the order. So Gyaltsabje's commentary says that sutra teaches the unique nature of the Buddhas and so forth, and thereby presents the 7 by way of their characteristics. The words teach in a linear order, consecutively, and in a continuous manner. The order taught in the root verses is in the same fashion. So in other words, this text is not only does it take the 7 Vajra points from that sutra, but the way of explaining the characteristics and also the order in which they're explained is according to that sutra as well. Then verse 3. So verse 3 talks about the order of the 7 Vajra points, kind of how they arise. And to me, this seems to be sort of cause-effect relationship. That's how it appears. Because he says, from Buddha, the Dharma, from the Dharma, the assembly of Aryas, from the assembly, the Tathagata essence. That's the first 4. Then he says, exalted wisdom is attained upon the ending of the element. Attainment of this exalted wisdom is attaining supreme enlightenment. So that's the 5th point. Endowed with attributes of powers and so forth. That's the 6th point, qualities that bring forth the welfare of all sentient beings. Like that would be the 7th point, activities to benefit sentient beings. So in His Holiness's commentary on Study Buddhism, he has a nice explanation of that. So I thought to read that. And this is different language. It's Alex Person's terminology. I did change some of the language to try to accord with our text, but yeah, it's got some of Alex's terms in there. So His Holiness says, first, he's commenting on this verse number 3. He says, first we have the clear evolved Buddhas. Okay, first of the 7. The Buddhas indicate the preventive measures or the Dharma, second Vajra point. Then, from these indications in the scriptures of the preventive measures of Dharma, the things that they themselves practiced, we get the highly realized Arya assembly of the Arya Sangha. That's the 3rd. So, based on the Buddha's teachings, then there come about the Aryas, the highly realized assembly of Arya Sangha who practice the Dharma as well. From this assembly, we can understand the Tathagata essence. That's the 4th point. And His Holiness says, this is referring to Buddha nature, or the essential factors of deep awareness and so forth. This is the source within all the members of the assembly that will allow them to reach enlightenment. So all the members of the assembly, the Aryas, have Buddha nature, and that will allow them to reach enlightenment, the 5th point. Then he says, attaining that deep awareness, one attains that supreme purified state of enlightenment, number 5. When one depletes the various stains or gets rid of the stains that are obscuring this source or essential factor within everyone, then one achieves the purified state of enlightenment. Again, number 5. When one has that state of enlightenment, one possesses the powers and so forth that are the qualities of that state of enlightenment. So the 6th point. Possessing all these qualities oneself, then one possesses the Dharma measures that bring meaningful benefits to all limited beings. So I guess that's the 7th one. In other words, one has the enlightening influence to be able to then help bring about the depletion of stains from others' Buddha natures. One is able to help bring them to enlightenment. It's in this way that one understands the order of these 7 points. So that's one way of looking at the order of the 7 Vajra points. And there is another way that we will look at next week, where they are cause and effect. And it's a little bit complicated because it also talks about an ultimate and a conventional aspect of each of the 7 Vajra points. So there's an ultimate Buddha, conventional Buddha. This isn't so unfamiliar. It's in some Lamrim. Yeah, some Lamrim books also talk about an ultimate aspect of Buddha, conventional aspect of Buddha, ultimate aspect of Dharma, and so on. But each of the 7 Vajra points has an ultimate and a conventional nature, and then they relate to each other in a sort of cause and effect way. So we won't do that tonight. We haven't done enough tonight. But before next week, I think one of the materials you were sent was a chart on this interrelationship among the 7 Vajra points. So you might just have a look at that, and then we'll go through that next week. And also, I thought to ask you to, before next week, homework, to learn the names of the 2 types of Buddha nature and the names of the 7 Vajra points, the way they appear in the root text. So I'm going to test you on those. Okay, so any questions? Ella's iPad raised hand.
This is maybe a simple question, but I just didn't know. Could you please explain the term Vajra in the sense of 7 Vajra points? Is it referring to like method, or I don't get?
Yeah, well, that is also coming. I don't think it's in the root verses, but it's in Gyaltsabje's commentary. I did write it down somewhere, but I'll do that next week. Why the term Vajra is used? I'll come back with that next week.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's not in the sense of like in Tantra, this thing, but Vajra has the sense of being very, very strong and invincible. That's the usual meaning of Vajra, so it probably has something to do with that.
I just wanted to let you know that I did find a sutra translated on 84,000 that's called The Teaching on the Great Compassion of the Tathagata. And it seems to be the sutra that's referred to in verse 2, I think, or verse
This
3.
King Dharani Svara Sutra?
I think so, because there's a section in the translation that talks about this sutra's association with Buddha nature literature, including Sublime Continuum.
Yeah, I didn't look on 84,000. I just Googled, and I didn't really come up with anything.
When I Googled that name, this is the sutra that came up.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like...
So yeah, I guess sutras sometimes have different names.
Yeah.
So maybe, because this is, that was written by Maitreya in 5th century, 3rd to 5th century. So maybe at that point in time, that title of the sutra was more common, and then maybe later another title of the sutra became more common. So maybe, yeah. So they have a translation of it? Okay.
Yeah, the teaching on the great compassion of the Tathagata.
It's probably about time to end then. Probably most of you had a long day working. Yeah. So let's end with dedication. So we have some dedication prayers, but also we can bring into our mind the motivation we had at the beginning of wanting to learn this topic for the benefit of all living beings, so that we can develop our own potential for enlightenment, our Buddha nature, and reach enlightenment and help other beings to realize their potential and start to develop it as well. But we don't have to wait till enlightenment before we start helping others. Yeah, any effort we make to learn the Dharma, practice the Dharma, live the Dharma in our lives, that itself is benefiting others. Who knows, we might inspire some other people to start following this path as well. So even if we're very far from enlightenment, we can still be benefiting others in their journey for enlightenment. So let's think of the positive energy, merit, potential that we've created through our joining this class tonight, and dedicate it to the well-being of all sentient beings, and especially to their ultimate attainment of Buddhahood, enlightenment. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-fulfilling, wish-granting jewel, source of every benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Patient in bearing the hardships of spreading the teachings of the Muni in general and the teachings of the victorious Jamgon in hundreds of directions, Lord of Dharma, holding the 3 vows and wearing saffron robes, please quickly return as the glory of the peerless teachings.